Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
and I'm Sad Tom.
We are Team Binge. We are here to talk about The Last of Us, Season 2, Episode 2. This one was called Through the Valley. Tom, I'm just going to tell you up front, I loved this episode. This episode was great, very uplifting. I loved every part of it. It's just, this show's typically so dark, but this one I just felt good at the end, you know? And so I enjoyed this immensely. I'm sure we've talked about my love of zombie movies, and I felt like there was the one episode in The Neighborhood that was like the sniper level in season one, and then there was this episode, and I doubt they're going to do it as big in other 5 episodes of this season, but I very much, other than there's one thing I didn't really enjoy, but this episode, I did, this felt like a movie on a grand
Right.
scale, and I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, I mean, to me, this is like just peak premiere HBO television where they knew they had this huge beat to hit in the death of Joel here, and adding on this massive battle that we get at Jackson, which is actually not something from the game, which
Oh,
we'll kind
really?
of get to. But this is just kind of like a showism that's kind of added just to be able to add some more tension. But like the cuts back and forth, the choices that they're kind of making between the game and the show, I mean, it's just brutal and heart wrenching. And I mean, I'm excited to kind of talk through it with you, somebody who didn't play the game, and kind of how this whole sequence and scene at the end kind of hit you.
Yeah, no, it reminds me of the time Mario beats Luigi to death in the Mario Brothers 4
With that wrench?
franchise. Yeah, with that wrench. So you're right. I did not play the game. My fear, I got to be honest, as I watched this episode, because it's kind of a slow draw in, was that we were going to build up to a zombie invasion that wasn't going to happen, and they were like, no sir, we're going to give you the zombie attack that you want, which I enjoyed. And then I would argue that there are certain shows where the audience members keep a pretty good like tight lip on, hey, the big twist of the show. Spoilers, Game of Thrones season 1, a critical character is killed at the end. And so this was not a very well kept secret. So I saw this one coming. I just didn't know when it was going to happen. And so it was interesting that they did it on episode 2 of a 7 episode season. It's kind of like, so the rest of it is going to be a reconciliation of him being gone. How are we going to handle that?
Yeah, I think, and this is anything spoiler, because there's plenty of trailers out there that show Joel in other capacities, so we'll get some flashbacks, like part
His
part
twin
2
brother?
of the game. Yeah, his twin brother.
Yoel, his twin brother, shows up into town riding on a white horse. Yes, the classic.
twist.
Incredible.
So we'll get some callbacks to Joel, and I think kind of what happened in that 5-year gap, or 4-year gap, whatever it is, from kind of the big lie to where we kind of ended. Because I think there's even some kind of hints in this episode with even the night before and how kind of Ellie and Joel kind of ended that portion of the relationship. So yeah, I think we'll still get more of our boy Pedro Pascal, because he was fantastic in the show. It was hard to see him go. One thing, and I'll kind of say at the top here, one thing that's a little bit unique in the show versus the games is that this happens very quickly in the game as well. And I think a lot of viewers kind of thought they might hold this a little bit longer just
Sure.
because of how powerful Pedro is as an actor and their relationship. Maybe they'd explored it more. But I kind of like the decision of them kind of going for it right away here. There are some different changes in terms of Abby and kind of her backstory, because that's delivered a little bit later in the game. It's not until like halfway through the game do you really realize and understand Abby's motivation, that she was the daughter of the doctor kind of performing everything. So the game kind of really does a much more slower burn of this woman that kind of comes in and well, not woman, like young woman really, that comes in and kills Joel. So brutal, but I like the way the kind of show presented it, and I'm here for it.
Sure, and she used a putter in the game, not a 9-iron, if I recall, right? That was just a subtle difference that
No,
people
I think the putter
caught.
is from there's another video game like BioShock. I think the guy kills the dude with a putter. So yeah, I think this was still a 9-iron.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Yeah, you've got to think that from HBO's standpoint, they sat down and had a meeting with the showrunners and was like, "Do we really want to do this in episode 2? Because he is like he's the movie star of the show, and so
He's hot right now.
yeah. He's so darn hot right now. That Hansel. And I mean, a similar fate in Game of Thrones, kind of like
Oh yeah.
crowd favorite, only to meet a terrible demise. Also with a putter, which is incredible that King's Landing had all that golf equipment just hanging out. But yeah, it's tough not to talk about like the most critical part of the show, but there's some other stuff I want to get through, Tom. So let's walk through the episode, and please shed your firefly light on all of the stuff that I'm confused by.
Will do.
You talked about Abby in the front. Big fan of Abby. Big fan of the actress that plays her. I feel bad for her group of friends. She seems to be like a singular force, and they're all like, listen, can we just go back to Seattle? They had coffee, and no one wants to be on this mountain. Oh, the way they shot this, I'm pretty sure they were really on a mountain, and there was really a blizzard, and It just all looked super cool. Other than her sledding trip down the hill, that one looked a little bit questionable, but...
I think I did watch some behind the scenes here, and they absolutely did film this like in the middle of a snowstorm. So like a lot of this is real and not CG.
Sure. So just quick touch on Abby. We find out her father was the doctor that was going to operate on Ellie. He took one in the dome from Joel, and this has been driving her ever since. They have this like weird kind of dream sequence where she's remembering finding his body. It's all very sad. So she is working from a eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, so that we're all blind and toothless point of view. But that's what's driving her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like the idea of like this kind of being probably a recurring nightmare. Like the older version of herself is like, listen, don't go in there. Like all you're gonna find is pain and suffering. Because what if she did go in that door? Would she be on the path that she's on now? It's pretty brutal. And even like when this scene starts, it's got that same like siren that's ringing in the hospital that we saw Joel go on his rampage. So it just brings you right back to that moment. It's tough to watch.
Sure. I wished we had gotten more questioning when these two finally meet, and we'll get to that part, but I've got some questions about the questioning. We then are with Ellie, and Ellie... So this is the day after the dance. Is that correct? We're all waking up from our hoedown, I believe they call it in Jackson Hole.
And this is essentially where the video game starts. Like the events of like what happened the previous night where like she kissed and then they got yelled at by Seth. Like that all happened like later on in the video game as like a flashback. So this is actually kind of where the game kicks off.
Okay, interesting. So it's 8 a.m., you're hungover. The instructions for the video game are like, hey, 12 hours before you start, just hammer a bottle of tequila and then turn your PlayStation on and you'll be ready for The Last of Us Part 2.
Exactly.
So Jesse wakes her up. Jesse, just a real friend. Actually, this guy's grown on me quite a bit. I'm sure only good things will happen to him from here on out. But I appreciate his candor with Ellie.
Yeah, their back and forth exchange is great. And like even the lines they have back and forth are ripped straight from the game. It's almost the exact same dialogue. It's pretty cool. But it is worth mentioning here, like we do get a quick cut of the guitar like on a stand in the room restrung. And as they're kind of walking, she even makes mention like, hey, I'm going to go on patrol with Joel today. And it's kind of like it takes Jesse aback because obviously where we left it last night and even what we saw as a show audience of her running past Joel, him just chilling on the porch. So there's obviously some other flashback I'm assuming we're going to get to see kind of what happened in that moment.
Sure.
Because at the end of it, they seem to have had some sort of resolution, right? Where it's like, I'm still me, he's still Joel, nothing can change that. So.
Sure. And I'm assuming there was a level where it's like Guitar Hero-esque, where you had to learn to play the guitar as Ellie, and the F chord is impossible, which is true in both real life and Guitar Hero.
I'm going to hold off on my video game guitar lessons until later on in the series.
Okay, sounds good.
Put a pin in that, Julian.
Okay. Oh,
put a guitar pick in that.
Great. All right. I won't remember this, but I look forward to you remembering it for us. We have Tommy running a town hall, which I mean, I don't want you to spoil anything, but it feels like Tommy, who I felt was maybe more of a minor character, is now going to take on quite a bit of responsibility for some of the continuing adventures of this show. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean, we even kind of saw that Joel was like the main contractor kind of this village or town. And now that we see the town just kind of get ripped apart here, like, and now they're going to be without Joel to rebuild. Yeah, Tommy, I think, is definitely going to take a leadership role more so than he already does now.
Sure.
But a lot of this is like pretty on the nose foreshadowing with all the stuff that's going to happen. Like you figure like in a normal show, if they let this cook a little bit, this would happen in like the first episode, and then maybe like the fifth episode, you'd have all this stuff happening. But it essentially happens, 20 minutes later at show runtime.
See, this didn't bother me at all. Like, I kind of liked it. One of the joys of zombie movies is like, oh, what would I do? Like, what would I use? How would I defend? And every show has their own, like, they have the tanks of gasoline that they roll out on those little chutes for all the good that they did them. I find that interesting, but also, like, if you take a classic war movie like Saving Private Ryan, you're at the bridges at the end, you get Tom Hanks explaining, hey, this is how it's going to go down, and then you as a movie watcher, like, get to see it happen. So
Right.
I get what you're saying, but I did actually enjoy, like, okay, old people, young are going to the basement, everyone else is going up top, stay off the streets. Which, when Tommy runs into the middle of the street with a flamethrower, I was kind of like, hey, Tommy, maybe listen to your own town hall meeting, but that's fine.
It was different. There was a bloater running into the town. He had to make choices.
That's okay. That's what those are called. The giant fat,
Correct.
the giant obese plants that run out. Those are called bloaters.
Yeah, the thick-boned or thick fungi creatures. Yeah, the bloaters.
Sure. The thing I think this show does well, of all the things that it does well, is it always includes children in these moments, which, as anyone that has a soul, like once a child is put in peril, like the stakes become more real. So
Right.
I thought it was even interesting, like he's like doing the drill with, hey, where do you go? He's even asking the kids, and the kids are responding poorly. But I liked how they kind of set up this community.
Yeah, for sure. And they even like make fun of that one guy that shot himself in the leg. I thought was kind of funny.
Sure.
But yeah,
His
this girl.
negligent discharge. Sure. Yeah. We should all make fun of that guy. Earl.
Yeah, and this girl clearly wasn't paying attention. She's going off into the forest. So
Yeah, Tommy should have been like, yeah, you go into the forest. And then the mom's like, well, and he's like, nope, she answered forest. And then they send her on her way because Jackson Hole is for Jackson Holes. All right, we have a Maria, Seth, and Ellie moment, and this is so that we can clean up the bigotry of the dance before. So this gentleman's name is Seth the bigot. That's his name. Oh, and he apologizes as one does, Tom, with meat between two pieces of bread.
yeah, breaking bread, and then like so he gives her steak sandwiches in the game. She like tosses it back to Jesse. He's like, I'm not eating these. These are bigot sandwiches.
I gotta be honest, I don't know that there's a ton of beef around, so even if it's racist beef, I'm probably going to, nibble on it a little bit when I get hungry. It's not going to be the first thing I grab. Obviously, I'm going to get the non-racist, like, Nutri-Grain bar. I'm going to eat that first, Tom.
Okay.
Maybe a Cliff bar, which is, like, ultra left-leaning, but then I'll go for the... Anyways, we got political again. My bad. Ellie just walking away was the world has opinions on Ellie as an actor, but I do think there are moments where it's like, hey, if someone was apologizing to you for that and you just didn't believe the apology or didn't care for it, this is how you would act, especially if you're kind of a punk 19-year-old. So I don't know. I appreciated it. So these patrols, Tom, these are just like normal two-person patrols where they ride out on horses just to see what's happening in the lay of the land. And there's a conversation that happens here where Jesse's like, oh, you could have gone with Joel, but he already left and he went out with Dina. And so I'm going to go out with you. And you get this moment of like, maybe some communication happened that I guess mended them a little bit, or
Yeah.
because Ellie expresses a desire to go with Joel. Whether or not that's just because Jesse's being annoying, I don't know. But there seems to be some sort of like piece that was extended to make her want to do that because she has wanted nothing to do with him previously.
For sure. And that's why talked about this earlier. I think Jesse kind of clocks it because this is not how they left the relationship earlier. So I think we're definitely going to get some flashback sequences of what happened that evening before.
Yeah, when they talk later in the episode, they wrap it all up and they're good again, which is great. We get to see the Ellie and Joel makeup scene, which is wonderful. Quick cut while all this is happening. The parallel storyline is like Abby is on watch from the rich person lodge on the top of the hill. Despite having a pretty sweet, like modern and nice polar tech jacket, she's cold, which I'm not going to judge. I've also been cold, but all of these clothes look brand new on everyone. I just want to keep pointing that out. They all look like they're from an LL Bean catalog.
I mean, that cottage was pretty dope. Maybe they pulled some new clothes from there.
Sure, that's fair. That's a good point. They're just all in their Patagonia and their, I already said LL Bean. Tom, quick, throw me another rich person cold weather gear.
Ooh, I live in Arizona. You're asking the wrong person.
Golly,
flip-flop.
They're Gap
Billabong.
Tech vests. Yeah, Billabong, good. See, that doesn't even represent Arizona. What's wrong with you? What are you, a Californian? Anyways, Abby sees the riders. We don't know exactly. At first, I thought she was watching Jesse and Ellie, but it later turns out to be Joel and Dina. And this is as a storm is coming in. I appreciated Ellie being like, hey, is that storm going to be a problem? And Jesse being like, no, it's going to stay in the mountains. And I was like, you, sir, are not a weatherman. How, like, what a weird response to that. You at least hedge. You're like, I don't know, maybe, like, probably. The forecast, I don't know.
I think it was very much like foreshadowing of what's to come.
Sure.
Like,
well, yes. I understand. I just... As a human that lives on this planet, I wouldn't be like, oh, I'm sure that storm's not going to touch us. I'd be like, oh, there's a good chance it's going to touch both us and that mountain.
Listen, we just didn't see it. There's a town meteorologist that Jesse talked to before he got Ellie for their patrol.
Pert Hapley came down and was
exactly.
Like,
the
you
word
heard
for
with Pert.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply.
Anyways, we got some radio issues. They're calling all the patrols back. Ellie and Jesse decide to shelter in place in where we all normally get our marijuana, a 7-Eleven, Tom. And we find out this is Eugene's farm, which matters to us.
Well, and I think I kind of maybe referenced this a little bit in the last episode too soon, so apologies for it. But yeah, we find out that Eugene he's the one that grew this weed and had this weed farm. And again, similar call to the game where actually in the game, it's Ellie and Dina that are together on this little kind of patrol as opposed to Ellie and Jesse. But Jesse does kind of come find them later at Eugene's farm here.
Sure.
But we do get a little bit more from Eugene where we find out, he's a firefly. He had a little pendant there. And there's some interesting back and forth about how Joel killed him. Like, he had to kill him. He couldn't save him. So was he infected? I'm assuming we're going to get more because I think we talked about it last episode that they did cast the Eugene role. So maybe he's going to be in a flashback.
Sure. Yeah, I would think that they have mentioned this incident twice now, that it's going to be some sort of pivotal role. And I think they're going to be trying to find ways to bring Joel back in flashback in just from a show running standpoint so that Joel can come back. And so it would make sense that they redo this. I did think the line was interesting where he said he was like a Vietnam vet and he's like crazy to survive a war only to die in this. And it kind of, I guess, do they give you a time period? I assume this is modern day, but did we ever establish years for this conflict?
They did, and I mean, I could take a guess at it, but the video game audience, I'm sure, will yell at me. I want to say maybe it's like 2009 is like when it, like the world stopped kind of a thing.
Got
so
it.
it's 5 years later, but I could be wrong on that.
Got it. And I think in season 1 we did do dates, and that would make sense. So we go to the best scene of the whole episode. Abby, in an attempt to go down to the writers, is like, I'm going to kind of shuffle my way down this cliff and everything's going to be cool. Oh no, she's sledding. It's going very poorly. Yeah, I think she was saying we. The thing that always drives me crazy in moments like this, these characters pop up and the super sweet assault rifle that they had on their back is now gone. And you're just like, I don't care what just happened. Find that rifle because it's serialized and you're going to get charged for it. How did you drop it? Go find it. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
But
she took quite a tumble there, but so I don't know if she was going to find this gun. I think it was probably pretty buried at that point. And there were other things buried in this area that I don't think she wanted to stay around long for.
That's fair. This was very cool to watch.
Yeah, this whole sequence, like this reminded me of, I don't know if you got the same vibe, but from season 4 of True Detective, the corpsicles.
Sure.
Like they're kind of like half like coming out of the ice. It's just brutal. I don't really know if I understand what was going on. Like Jesse had a quick little exposition in the beginning saying like they're hibernating and they're using the other dead infected as insulation. So maybe this is like a fungi thing that, you know, mushrooms actually do. I don't really know. But man, the visuals of them like that one clicker kind of like spinning and you thought it was like waking up, but it was just kind of like all the other ones below it just bubbling up from the surface. It's definitely reminiscent of that first season where they were all kind of coming from like the sewers.
Sure. So this is not a gameism. This is something they came up in the show.
There's definitely some hordes and stuff like in the game, like even like as we're getting like Abby starts to run away and she's kind of crawling under the fence and it's like falling on her. Like
that was terrifying.
Oh man, so brutal. And that's straight from the game too. So there are like hordes of zombies that kind of run at you and you're kind of running away. But like the way that this is prefaced of, you know, them evolving and being like smarter, infected, this is all kind of new.
I mean, when that fence, which is probably rusty, is pushing on her, and I don't know if she's got her tetanus, but just the idea of her getting like a rusty poke and then getting tetanus was terrifying. I was like, you know, get your shots, Abby.
I'm pretty sure.
I was screaming, get your shots. Don't let the fence hurt you the whole time.
I'm quite certain there's at least one of those infected that got tetanus. He was like shoving his hand through the fence as it's like going through the webbing of his hand. Oh, dude, that's brutal.
That's when they discover that you can kill these things with tetanus. So everyone just carries around lengths of chain link fence, rusted chain link fence. This leads to Joel saving her, which once this happened, I was like, oh no. And this leads to, well, I feel like it is appropriate right here. This is where the zombies are running. Like there's just a horde of zombies running. And I can't give enough credit to whatever zombie movie did it first, whether or not it's like, I don't know, Dawn of the Dead or 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later. The idea of like an undead, and I know this is fungi, not like a curse or a blood thing, but just the running zombie horde will never not be like thrilling to me. Like
right.
World War Z, sign me up. I enjoy them. It's nerve-wracking. I mean, I can't imagine being an extra in this where you had to sit in makeup for 3 days and then run around in a real blizzard. But
right.
Props to him. This looked like a movie. I thought it was really well done.
Well, and I was watching or listening to the podcast from the showrunners afterwards, and they were talking about like all the extras that they'll kind of add CGI to the actual people running, and like just how it adds to the craziness of it. And I think even in the first season, like that first zombie that kind of comes out of like the ground always is that one that gets like stomped on because all the other ones are feverishly running behind it.
Right.
Like it's brutal and just so terrifying.
Right. And just the idea of the horde like hitting a wall and then crawling over each other to get over a wall is such a cool. Anyways, I enjoyed this episode so much, Tom. I loved every bit of it. I rewatched it immediately because I was overjoyed with how good it made me feel. Speaking of how good it made me feel, there is a note here when Joel, Abby, and Dina all come together that Dina says Joel's name, and you catch Abby clocking it. And
Yeah.
so that's kind of when your heart sinks a bit.
And she's like reaching for her gun, and of course, like her pistol. This is the second weapon she's lost in the matter of a couple
So
minutes.
careless, so careless. It's called a lanyard. You can attach it to a firearm and attach it to your body. Come on, Abby. But I guess, did you get like in that moment, would she have shot him?
I mean, I think so. Like, I mean, because she doesn't know what other opportunity that she's going to have here. Doesn't know what Joel's going to do. I think that was certainly her first instinct was to do that.
Sure.
And then she very quickly realizes, like, to survive this, I need their help. I need their horses. I can lure them back to this mountain lodge and then kind of have my way.
Sure. So we head to the mountain lodge, this beautiful, beautiful mountain lodge, which pristine condition for something that hasn't been lived in for, I don't know, 5 years. We have a radio room, which is like working with all of the patrol leaders. The character, I believe, Radio Amy is, I believe, the character. Is this in the video game, Tom?
No, I don't think we meet a lot of I think some of these things are like applied with the different people that kind of work through this town, but we never actually meet Amy, I don't think.
Okay. Well, as someone who's had radios not work and go down very often, I felt for Amy in a deep and kinshipy way, because there's nothing worse than someone being like, "Can't you get a hold of them?" And you're like, "They're out of cell phone range. I don't know what to do for you."
Just do it better.
Just
like Tommy going in there, just connect me somehow.
Yeah, just do it better. All right, we have Jesse and Ellie have heard on the radio that Joel and Dina did not check in. This leads to them being like, "Hey, let's go circle around the mine. You go this way, I'll go that way." Tom, I would just like to go into Julian's zombie survival patrol corner. You don't split up. Like, it's a blizzard. Radios don't work. There's a horde of zombies. You don't split up. You stay together.
That's why you went out there in the first place as a duo. So
Right.
to split up now does seem a little sus. But again, I think it's interesting to point out here, too, that, like we said in the game, that at this point, Ellie was with Dina when they kind of got caught in the storm. Joel is actually with, or Tommy is with Joel in this sequence, not with Dina. So I think they kind of switched out Tommy because obviously they needed him to be part of this bigger battle in the city. And then bringing Dina in, I think, just kind of adds to that emotional weight of the scene to come.
Sure. It took me a beat to realize this, Tom, but a through line from episode 1 to episode 2 is that the water main, or one of the main pipes, has cordyceps in it. Mm-hmm. And we see this moment, this worker like remove some of the dead roots and the live ones move on him. And he's like, "I'm terrified by these live plants." Now, the horde like changes directions, I think, in this moment. So is the idea that this horde was awoken by Abby, and then that root system that alerts the horde is now directing these guys to Jackson Hole? Or is this all just like a lucky coincidence that she fell on that horde? And
yeah, I mean, there's questions about like what are the infectors' motivation. I mean, obviously there's
what is their motivation, Tom? Did someone in Jackson Hole hurt one of their family members? Why are the infected doing what they're doing? Do they think there's a cure? Do they love fire, Tom? Do they love bullets? Do they think lead and brass will help them? Is that why they're running to Jackson Hole, Tom?
Listen, there were so many of these infected all in this one area, which made me think this is just like a neighboring town. I don't know Wyoming very well, so I'm just going to say this is people from Casper, Wyoming. They were all just kind of hanging out, ready to take vengeance on Jackson.
No, Tom. I know you don't watch Yellowstone, but when Rip tapes people to the train station or the bus station, whatever, and he murders them and throw their bodies off the cliff, these are all the people that Rip has murdered from Yellowstone. He's murdered, more people than polio, apparently. It's insane how many people come out of the ground. This was like a mass burial that somehow got infected.
But, I mean, the general idea, I guess, of these infected is that they want to spread the disease or spread the fungi. So when they're chasing a couple people and then the network of fungi realizes a cordyceps can find a whole village full of them, they immediately just beeline it and leave the horses and then run for the village or the town. It's cool.
No, it was definitely cool to watch. I just didn't. There were a couple of times the horde turns, and I'm like, are they following the wind? Is there a leader? Is the bloater? The bloater's like, go over there. There's a place in the fence we can go through. And the guy's like, what? And they're like, I don't know how they communicate. Anyways,
Yeah, that's a fair point.
the horde's headed towards the town. Everyone's going to basements and roofs or Once again, I enjoyed this. It's like, hey, this is how these people they drilled for it, and now it's real time. We've got some barrels of fuel, which I got to be honest. A lot of fossil fuels being burned in this. Are these guys even worried about the environment, Tom? You know,
Yeah,
I don't know.
I would also argue this is a log fortress, so putting like flammable barrels doesn't seem like the greatest idea. But
well, that's what the chutes were for. They sent them far enough away. I thought they were gonna like drop them down those chutes, and the barrels were just gonna roll over the infected, and they were gonna be like, "Oh, it works. We're crushing them." And then someone would be like, "Aren't those full of gasoline?" And he's like, "Yeah, we weighed them down with gasoline so they crush them." And then they're like, "Huh, good idea." And then they just go back to shooting and never light them on fire. But
I would argue they did shoot a lot of the zombies that were already on fire. I would just leave those guys. They're probably toast.
Tom, let them burn. Let them burn. Yep, I agree. I agree. So let's talk about flames, and I would bring this up when we get to Tommy's portion. But Tom, last spring when all of the weeds came out in my yard, I bought a flamethrower. Not one of the fancy flamethrowers, just one on Amazon. It's like a metal tube with a safety relief valve and a clicker to light it. And I started torching the weeds in my yard. And here's the deal. It sucks, and it didn't work, and it wasn't very efficient. You know what works? Chemicals, Tom. Roundup. I don't know why these guys haven't been searching for Roundup for years, and they just spray these infected, and then in 6 months they die, and then they don't come back for 4 months, Tom. So, Roundup. I cannot say it enough or too loudly. These guys should have filled this place with Roundup. A moat, Tom, a moat around their castle filled with, say it with me, Roundup. And I think we would have been fine.
My wife had the same idea of a moat, but then I quickly thought, well, yeah, moat's a brilliant idea, but then it's the middle of winter. That wouldn't last very long. They have a lot of slippery infected.
Okay. The moat's filled with Roundup, and then on top of it, you cover it in gasoline, and then you light the gasoline on fire, and you just have a burning Roundup moat. You get the best of both worlds, flame and Roundup. No plant can... Anyways.
I'm sure the fumes are no problem at all.
Oh, yeah. No, everyone dies very quickly. Because half of them don't want to wear masks, and the other half are like, the air's toxic, and then they all die. Anyways, okay. So... we have, I appreciate the stakes of Tommy and Marie, like, Maria, forgive me, her being the mayor of the town, him being like the security guy. They've got to have like one last hug as she fights on the roof and he runs around with a flamethrower. Just stand up in the back of the pickup truck like those other guys. The guy that ran when the four of them are in the street with flamethrowers and the guy's like, I'm out of here. That was the smartest gentleman in the whole town because he realized how flawed it was to be standing in the middle of the street with the flamethrower, which is not an immediately effective weapon.
Yeah, I mean, I questioned like the length of the range of this weapon, right? Because these zombies are infected or running very fast. Even if you do light them on fire, they're gonna barrel you over.
Sure. Can you imagine if in his holsters he had 2 like Windex cleaner containers of Roundup and he was just squirting these guys in the face with Roundup, Tom? How dope would that have been? They would have been down and they would have murdered him, but 6 months later they would have died, and then 4 months they would have been cleared. Ground cleared. Roundup. This podcast has been sponsored by Roundup, by Montesanto, or whatever company is ruining all the seeds. All right, let's move on. I appreciated the Tommy in the street fight. I appreciated his jacket. His jacket, by the way, is dope, Tom.
I'd agree.
Love to have his jacket.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a Billabong jacket.
But no, sir. This leads to Tommy's big bad fight, which is with a...
It's with a flamethrower, and
bloater.
You do get like
bloater, Tom. That's what I was looking for. Thank you.
I
know what a flamethrower is. I've been talking about him for 15 minutes.
This is a weapon you do get in the game, and it's very effective against said bloaters. So it's cool to see him use it. And just like in the game, like you get. I mean, you have like a small little canister that you kind of use as your ammo, and you can kind of see the gauge kind of fall down. So as like the camera's like cutting to the gauge slowly kind of drop to 0, as this thing seemingly is unaffected by all of this flame, only to fall at the very last second. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was a cool scene. That guy, the bloater, is pretty ugly and terrifying. Yeah, I honestly, I was scared for Tommy. I did think, all right, this is where we lose Tommy. But knowing how this episode ended, I'm glad we kept Tommy, just from the standpoint of, I think some revenges need to be. I mean, let's just keep the revenge cycle going, right? You murder my guy, I murder yours. That's how the world finds peace. You know what I mean?
Yeah. This is, and then 23 seasons of television later.
Yep. Everyone's killed everyone's great grandchild.
I do have a quick question here. As we kind of finish this scene, who let the dogs out, Julian?
Maria did, Tom. And as not a dog guy, although I own one and he's a wonderful pet, why are dogs so effective? This seems like...
Because they can't get infected.
Is that what it is?
Like the cordyceps virus, it only attacks humans. So that's why like horses, other animals are not infected or can be infected. So that's why like dogs are so brutal in this world. And just watching these CGI dogs just destroy these infected was incredible. I want more of it.
They should have given those dogs Roundup. The dogs and the Roundup combined would be unstoppable, you know? Anyways, the dogs were great. And once again, I love a CGI animal. Thank you, show, for giving us more.
This episode is brought to you by Pluto TV. Pluto TV has all the shows and movies you love streaming for free. That means laughter is free with gut-busting comedies like The Neighborhood, Key and Peele, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Mystery is free with countless cases to crack from Criminal Minds, Tracker, and Matlock. And thrills are free with heart-pumping hits like The Walking Dead and Defiance. Feel the free. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.
Abby, at this moment, is taking Joel and Dina to the lodge while they watch Jackson burn. And Joel is like wanting to get back. And that obviously is not going to happen. Although there are some moments, because he saved Abby's life, they do keep you kind of on your toes in terms of... Because she tells him, hey, I'll get you back up there. We'll come and fight with you. We'll get you back to your town. And you don't really know... Because... we haven't spent enough time with Abby to, I guess, know how deeply she hates Joel.
Right. And even Owen in the beginning was saying, like, hey, our plan is we have to stop Abby from doing this, right? So you thought maybe they could, like, talk her out of this, but nope, it's not happening.
Nope, it's not. We give Dina some milk of the poppy so that she goes to sleep for 1 hour, exactly, I guess.
Yeah, very convenient plot device, but I get it.
Tom, I don't know if you ever watched Smallville, but anytime they needed Kent Clark not to be identified as Superman, they'd just knock out one of his friends. And so by the end of the show, his friends had roughly, 800 concussions. They would not be at a functioning level, but that's what I thought about when they knocked Dina down.
Yeah, I do like it. But I like the idea of Dina being here, and I think even Abby, as she's kind of doing her monologuing bit, is like, hey, you need to tell the truth because you hold Dina's life in your hand. And we already kind of had that little bit in the first episode where Dina and Joel do have a close relationship.
Sure. So you think this adds to him, I guess, admitting to what he's done so that they have more leverage on him than him just being captured alone. You think that's why they... Because this has changed from the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because her kind of comment is like, what was the last place you saw the fireflies? And he says Salt Lake, which we know that was the hospital and everything else. And at this point, he essentially tells the truth that he couldn't tell Gail early on in that therapy session.
Sure. But is this just a better therapist, would be my question. Is Abby a better therapist than Gail? They both have someone that was a family member that Joel murdered, but they take entirely different therapy tactics in order
One's
to
weed and alcohol, one's shotgun and golf gloves.
Yes, exactly. Oh, when she shot him in the leg, I did not care for that, Tom. I did not care for it at all. And she very coldly is like, please tourniquet him. And I did not like it.
Yeah, straight from the game, this whole bit. And again, there's less of this monologuing bit where she gets to kind of say it all, because in the game, she is just going after him and like it just essentially murders him here. And we don't really know. We don't have any of Abby's backstory here.
Oh, interesting.
She's just introduced as a character that wants to kill Joel, and you have no idea why. So not until like you're midway through the game and you're kind of playing as Ellie, kind of seeking some of this vengeance, do you kind of realize and understand her backstory. So there's a lot of people online, like gamers specific, that didn't like this or they didn't like the way the showrunners took it. But I think you kind of had to do this. We, as a show audience, needed to understand at least some of Abby's motivation. So saying that, you know, her dad was the doctor that he kind of shot, an unarmed man, defenseless. We find that a little bit out later in the game.
Right. She's like, you killed my dad and 18 others, but we don't care about those 18 others. You killed my dad. I think this is also the moment where she's like, oh, you're 6 foot, gray, you're handsome. And I'm pretty sure that was Pedro Pascal was like, hey, guys, I got a little writing note. Maybe she should mention how handsome I am, because the internet and the world already doesn't think I'm handsome enough, and I think this might add to my reputation. And so they're like, okay, yeah, we'll have Abby, before she murders you, she'll call you handsome. That makes a lot of sense. Which I think it adds a little bit to how unhinged Abby slowly becomes in this moment.
Well, I think they mentioned this at the first episode where they did like the flashback. Like, hey, we don't know who this Joel guy is. He's just, he's at his 60s, he's got a scar, and he's handsome. So she kind of calls back to that 5 years later.
I understand what she's doing, and maybe in episode 1, Pedro was like, hey, I know I'm not in the scene, but when Abby talks about me, maybe she calls me handsome. I don't know. What do you guys think?
What's an actor thing? Is it their writers? What do they have, like specific things in their contract that have to be done?
Yeah, a writer. Yeah.
Yeah.
every time Pedro's character is mentioned, you have to say handsome in it. Oh man. Anyways, so this is where we find out how deeply Abby hates Joel, and also she has this conversation where she's like, we have a code. My dad told me we should never kill the defenseless, which you are, but I'm still going to kill you.
And they do make mention of like Isaac, right? And they did in the previous episode of like the group in Seattle. So we know that we don't know
Isaac
exactly
is the one with the code. Forgive me, not the dad. Okay,
yeah,
that's right.
You're good. So like they did join this other group in Seattle that kind of essentially kind of prepped him and prepared her in this group to be able to kind of come after Joel.
Sure. And she starts to monologue a little more, and I really appreciated Joel just being like, shut up and do it. It was great. It was great.
And this, I mean, again, ripped straight from the game. And I mean, knowing this was going to happen as a game, you know, somebody who played the game, just seeing this brought to life in the show, I thought was just so incredibly impactful. And all of it hit me like really hard.
Like a golf
and like
club.
Yeah. And her line here was like, she's like, just do it, get on with it. And he's like, you don't get to rush this. It's just like sends a shiver down your spine. And then she walks over to that golf bag, picks up that club, and just brutal.
Sure. Yeah, it was brutal. I don't understand. At one point she goes to her fists, and I was like, go back to the golf clubs. It's probably going to be more effective, and you're not going to hurt your hand. While the thudding of flesh on flesh is happening, not in a fun way, but in a brutal, our poor boy Joel way, Ellie shows up, and Ellie rushes in because she sees the horses, so she hears the thudding and realizes something bad is happening. And this leads to her less than successful rescue effort and the brutal moment where she has to watch our boy get a 9-iron to the neck. And yeah, didn't enjoy this. Didn't enjoy the screaming. Didn't enjoy the crying. Didn't enjoy the dying. As I said in the beginning, love this episode. Super happy. All great. Didn't care for any of this.
Yeah, and like, I mean, you said it kind of a little bit in the beginning about like certain people just don't love Bella Ramsey as like the casting for Ellie. And like, I get Ellie's a little bit different in the games than she is in the show. But like, I mean, this to me is just proof of how incredible of an actress she is. And like, I think how close Bella and Pedro are in real life.
Sure.
Because like you see her like looking at this father figure and crying and screaming and telling him to get up. And even like there's this slight moment where Joel is just, I mean, he cannot move, but he's like, hears Ellie screaming and he's trying to lift his hand and his fingers even though he has nothing left. It's just so heart-wrenching, and like watching this kind of come to life again in the show was so hard to watch, and I thought I was prepared for it, man, but it still got me.
Sure. Yeah, it was a brutal end, and we get Ellie's promise that she's going to kill them all. Now, I have questions as to why we just knocked Dina out and then we left Ellie in a relatively fit state on the ground. I think she takes a couple of kicks to the rib from Fanboy from Top Gun Maverick. But I don't know. We're just kind of perpetuating a cycle. Honestly, I think if they just end Ellie and Dina here, then that cycle ends because there are no witnesses. But we still have 5 more episodes and probably another couple of seasons. So this is going to, I'm assuming, continue. Tom, just to clarify, in the game, this happens early in 2, correct?
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
It happens, very, very, very early.
Do you still play Abby? Because you play Abby as a character in the game. Do you still play Abby as a character after this scene?
Yes. So
Okay.
like you play her a little bit in the beginning and then mainly as Ellie, like after this scene, and then a bunch as Ellie, and then kind of midway through the game, they kind of like switch the character on you a little bit. And the thing that's interesting about the game is like the concept of like who is the villain here, right? Because they do it all very quickly with like Abby's monologue here, but I think as an audience member, and again, you tell me your thoughts because you're kind of new to this, but who really is the villain? Like, is she justified in what she's doing? Like Joel just kind of killed everybody blindly in this room to be able to save Ellie, whereas for what you think of Abby, she does not kill everybody in this room. Does leave witnesses, if you will. She is only going after Joel because Joel is the one that took her father away. And like you said, like where does this cycle of vengeance end? Like it's just this blind revenge. Abby lost her father and now she is taking away the father figure of Ellie. So now we've already seen Ellie in dark places, and now that she had to witness this firsthand, what is this going to do to her?
Sure. Those are all good points that I did not spend a lot of time thinking about because my love for Pedro Pascal made it seem like Abby was the bad person. But you're correct. She did not systematically go through a hospital and murder 19 people like our boy Joel did. But that's just a credit to the writing in the story. I will argue that if there was a little bit, and Tom, this seems to be a running theme with you and I and the shows that we watch, if there was a little bit of communication here, maybe there would have been a little bit more understanding from both Abby and Joel's side in terms of, hey, your father kidnapped my daughter and was going to kill her on the operating table. So in order to save her, I did a little bit of murdering.
Well,
Maybe
I think
that
there's
doesn't
nods.
save his life, but
Yeah.
it's a little bit of communication. I also recently watched a program where someone opened a Pepsi and it really solved all the problems. Like it extended that olive branch. So maybe if they had just offered the other person some sort of carbonated beverage, then the peace would have, moved throughout.
Pepsi when you don't have Coke.
Right.
I would argue that like there's moments in this monologue where she's kind of saying and putting this all out there, like, hey, you killed my dad. Like Joel gets it. Like he understands her motivation and I think realizes that he deserves kind of what's coming to him. That's why I don't think he doesn't try to like fight for it or say I'm justified or try to have a dialogue. He realizes like I probably do deserve this.
Sure.
But the other thing I think it's interesting is like, and I think I've seen it brought up online a bunch of times, is like the concept of the trolley problem, like an ethical question of like, you see this trolley, it's going to hit 5 people, but do you make the conscious decision to have it switch the tracks and then only hit one person? But I think what's interesting about this show is like, there really is no trolley problem here because the characters are just making these choices in a vacuum. They're not even thinking about really the consequences.
Right.
So like Joel was never going to not save Ellie. That was always his destiny. And I think the same thing can be said about Abby here. She was always going to find and seek this vengeance on Joel.
Sure. In a way, the trolley has already run over all the people. And then
True.
Keanu Reeves has got it to speed up so that he can jump that unfinished section of the freeway so that he and Sandy Bullock can kiss at the end. So I get what you're saying. I'm familiar with the trolley problem. I watched
For the bus problem.
I enjoyed. What was it was called? The bus that sped around town, and if it went under a certain speed,
super fast, I think is what it's called.
That's right. The trolley. And then they made a trolley too on a boat. That's what it was. The boat trolley. Anyways, I do want to super sad, and super sad because the music made me super sad too, Tom.
Yeah, and some heart-wrenching music. So like in the game, Ellie kind of gets knocked out and doesn't get to have this moment where she like kind of walks over to Joel or kind of like shuffles over to him. So like that was brutal to watch. But then as it's kind of panning out and you have this bird's eye view of this horrific scene here, we get this gorgeous and beautiful song called Through the Valley, so the namesake of the episode here. And this hit me, it's actually hitting me hard right now, like listening to the performance of this song sung by Ashley Johnson, who did the voice of Ellie. I thought was just so poetic and beautiful because people that had played the game have heard Ellie's voice just, throughout, 30 hours of 2 of these video games. So to hear her kind of sing this song that has very poignant lyrics, kind of saying like, because I walk through the valley of shadow of death, and I fear no evil because I'm blind. And oh, I walk beside the still waters, and they restore my soul. But I know when I die, my soul is damned. Like, it's just so gorgeous, so poetic, and just so gut-wrenching, even as a game player and as a show watcher, to kind of like listen to these lyrics and how it's, kind of ties into Abby's story and to Ellie's story of this kind of concept of revenge. And regardless of what they do, they realize that the actions that they've taken have damned their souls. It's amazing.
Yeah, I did not know. I mean, I noted the song. I noted its eerie and mournful tones, but I did not know it was performed by the actor that played her in the game. But yeah, it's definitely a brutal episode, and as this is happening, we see that Jackson has survived, that they have killed the Horde, but Joel did not, and we're going to have to see how that all unravels in terms of how Ellie takes it, how Tommy takes it, and how the town kind of rebuilds. So it was... I mean, it's tough to say you enjoy an episode like this, but because of the killing of the sacred deer at the end, but it was to me a very good episode of television. It's like we talked about it off mic, like Hard Home, when you watch the Game of Thrones episodes that were like key, large set piece battles and just how well done they are, and then the red wedding of it all, where a character that you love dies. And so, yeah, I enjoyed this. I'm just interested to see, since this is 2 of 7, where we go over the next 5 episodes.
Yeah, for sure, man. And I'm with you. I feel like, browsing through social medias after this episode ran, and I would argue too, if you're somebody who's on social media and watching a show like this, like, stay off of it as much you can, because
sure.
They just spoil everything.
Right.
It's the worst. Like, even like trailers heading up to this, like there was like a image of a golf club in one of the trailers for this episode, and then everybody online that played the game were like, "Oh, I guess I'm going golfing this weekend." Just like dumb things.
Incredible.
But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Like, to be able to do the mass battle they had in this scene or in this episode, knowing that they have this huge pivotal moment that essentially is the catalyst for the rest of this season and this game. And probably seasons to come. It's amazing, and it's, I think, probably one of the better hours of television I've ever seen.
Sure. And you could argue that this was like, they could have made this into 2 episodes. I mean, Joel and Abby, that confrontation in itself, if you wanted to stretch this out and load it down, is 1. But like, to put it inside of an episode where this mass attack is happening on this town that you've learned about and met some of the occupants of, like those 2 combinations, I just found it very interesting and very well done. So I honestly, I will probably rewatch this episode before watching 3, just because I'm sure, I mean, there's so much happening when that horde attacks that it would be worth watching. And then, maybe I'll just put the last 10 minutes on repeat, make myself feel sad over and over again.
I did see a lot of people online saying that they're done with the show now that Pedro has gone, which I would argue, like, yes, it's an upsetting moment. And I think there's even people that played the game that when this happened, they just turned off the game. They didn't come back to it until months later. But there's still an amazing story told throughout this game. And I would encourage you, if you're thinking of jumping out, hang on. There's still a lot to come.
Well, what I was going to get to earlier is when, even after this moment, you still play as Abby in the game. How are you not just running Abby into every infected, and just, you guys are all you game players are a bunch of cowards that you continued to play on Abby's side. You should have just offed her as soon as you could, and then sent the game back to Target or wherever people buy video games. Anyways. Tough one to transition into anything fun, but for those of you that are with us, you can reach us, let us know your thoughts and feelings, what we missed, what we didn't miss, at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. You can rate and review us on Apple, Spotify, subscribe. Any of that stuff helps us out, and we do appreciate it. And we do appreciate hearing from people that listen to us, because it's always fun to get fresh perspectives. We are hearing from people as far away as, Norway, Tom? Is that where it was?
I think the Netherlands. Our friend Fred from the Netherlands reaching out. We greatly appreciate it. But yeah, as Julie mentioned, follow us on the social medias of your choice, of your platform of your choice, at Team Binge or at Team Binge Podcast. Like I said, it was an emotional episode. If you're feeling sick, that's a very understandable response, but stay with it. Follow Ellie, these characters. There's a lot of beautiful story left.
Sure. And, I mean, Tom, I hate to turn this into down a strange avenue, but this happened on Easter, and there was a famous gentleman who was killed on Easter, and then on the third day, he showed back up. So is there any way that our boy Joel here on, let's do the math, Tuesday shows back up, just feeling good and ready to take on the world?
I mean, it's possible, but he might have a mushroom on his head.
Oh, yeah, that's right. There are. Yeah. Anyways, all right. For Team Binge, I have been Julian.
And I have been Sad Tom. Till next week, everybody.